Hey guys, thanks very much for watching my channel, The Great Apostate. Hope you're doing well. I'm just chillaxing. My kids are asleep. My wife's upstairs watching. She started watching Reiki healing videos. That is the most... I don't like to be negative, about things that people like. But seriously, if the person's not touching you, they're not massaging you, guys. How would you get a happy ending from a Reiki healer? I don't even know how that would work. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, I'm just chilling out here, and I was thinking about something I saw today, and it gave me the opportunity actually to make a video that I've wanted to make for a long time, but I never really have talked about very much, but I'm going to do it today. And the thing I saw rather was on the Reddit forum, and it was a picture of, so I tried to find it again, but I couldn't find it, and the little thing was, how you see someone who says they're Jehovah's Witness, and basically I think it said something like a life half lived, or a life lived unfulfilled, or something like that. And it got me to thinking about the people that I knew growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. Remember this guy called Brian? Brian was like what you'd call in Northern Ireland or Britain, you'd call him a white boy. He never really had a decent job, and he was always looking for ways to sort of make a living, and he's still doing that. And the thing that was, he was a real charismatic guy. He became an elder, and then he lost it spectacularly because he was a heavy drinker. Too heavy even for the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so that ended badly for him. But he always wanted to sort of sport big long hair and be like a rock and roller. Or I think for him, it would have been a George Best footballer. Would have been him. And he became an elder, as I said. And when he did talks, they were always analogies of football or soccer, because he said he wants to, get with the young people. He taught me, even though he knew fine well I couldn't stand the game at the time, and he talked about this, but he always told me that he wished he could have grown his hair long. And I see him now, and even as a guy probably who's nearly 60 years old, he's still got an amazing head of hair, which, I lost my hair at 18, for God's sake, started losing it. So I'm very jealous of that. It's a big head of white hair, mine, but, huge. And he keeps it all close shorn. They never made him an elder again. He's never really had a successful life. And I feel for him, even though he was, in many ways, a bit of a scumbag. I do feel for him for that. And it made me think about the unfulfilled life that so many Jehovah's Witnesses have led. And it made me think of my own life. What I see looking back when I was a Jehovah's Witness. I tried to approach this sort of, logically and say, okay, is there anything good about Neil, who was a witness? Was there anything, real positive about it? And I think that, for my personality, probably I swore less. I practically didn't swear at all. Whereas now I probably swear too much. My kids would certainly say that. So that's a fact. I probably swore less. But what kind of person was I? I was definitely unfulfilled, the life that I was leading. I was unhappy. I was sad. I was weak. Not physically weak, but not just physically weak, I should say, but mentally weak. And loads of the things that I was interested in, I couldn't do. I always had a big interest for martial arts. I grew up in the days when people could talk about martial arts and they'd still have that conversation, who would win, Muhammad Ali or Bruce Lee? Well, here's a hint. Muhammad Ali was 3 times the size of him, and Bruce Lee never had a proper fight, so have a guess. But we didn't know these things at the time, and I remember when I was, I think 17, 18, I went to Canada on my own, because that's where I was raised as a very young child, and I went to Canada, and when I came home, back to Northern Ireland, where I still am, I'd gone to Canada. I had seen my cousins, and they had introduced me to this new thing. It was called the UFC. Whoa, an Ultimate Fighting Championship. They just had like their first 4 competitions, and I remember watching the Gracies beating these guys up, the Gracie brothers, Hoist brothers on his own, I should say, and Hoist Gracie was just putting these guys into the most terrible positions, and it looked like magic. And it didn't matter, you'd be a 400-pound man, Hoist was going to kick your ass. And I was amazed. And then I saw the UFC 4. And then that was when Dan Severn, Dan the Beast Severn, who was an American wrestler, a professional wrestler, you know, pardon me, before the days of the WWA, WWF, yeah, before then. And he just, you know, there was no style with him, just, you know, oh, I'll pick you up, drop you on head, I will crush you. And that was so cool. Anyway, I wanted to do that so much, and I never got a chance. 18 years old, 19 years old, 20, 21, 22. Sort of vacillating between being a good witness and a bad witness, trying to do good, which I felt was good, not doing good, cleaning windows on this treadmill, you know. 25, leave the Jehovah's Witnesses in a bang of glory, a blaze of glory, and date my girlfriend, who later on then went to become my wife, Linda, and met a guy I used to know in Lisburn, a guy I went to school with, and he stopped me and he says, "How you doing, Neil?" We've never been close friends, and, he'd barely speak to me, and he says, "I've started a class teaching mixed martial arts." Really? Big guy. I'm actually wearing one of my t-shirts. It's a tap-out top, and I'm wearing tap-out shorts tonight, which is what made me think about this. And I was like, oh, but it wasn't me that you're looking at. It was this. I was a much smaller guy. I wasn't quite muscly or broad, and I was scared of my own shadow. And I was like, no, I couldn't do that. And I looked at Linda, and Linda was like, "Go, Neil, go." And I did. I went. So I'm whispering because my kids are asleep. And I started going to MMA. Rubbish for ages. I'm not a natural athlete. I'm just not. Some are and some aren't. My brother's a natural athlete, but I'm not. It takes me a long time to learn, and I get eclipsed real quick. But I loved it. I loved the feelings it gave me. I loved the ability to just, I suppose in a sort of a real primal way, to impose yourself on someone. You just know that, after I've been doing it for 6 months, a year, at the time especially, because so few people in my country did it, that I could walk into a room and, and I could look around and there was nobody who could do, you'd look as a guy and you're a young fella and you go, "There's anybody here could beat me up," and you go, "Nope, nobody could do that. Everybody, I could take two at once of anybody in this room." And it was a really cool feeling. It was the first time in my life that I felt like a man. And although that's not what it is to be a man, but it's part of it. Okay, and I felt amazing doing that, and it gave me such a thrill and such pleasure. And I stopped doing it, unfortunately, because I got a detached retina. But that's another story. Anyway, one of the things that made me think about 7 minutes, good lord, are you still watching? That made me think about this video and made me think about the life half lived of Jehovah's Witnesses was the Neil that was a witness. Wouldn't have said boo to a goose, was scared, was nervous, was very emotional. I'm still a very emotional guy, but that's one of those things I think you just are. But here's the coolest thing about what it gave me, is it gave me the opportunity to take part, to do something which probably most people will never get to do in their lives, and it's that I was able to save 2 people. I was actually able to save 2 lives, solely because of stuff that Jehovah's Witnesses are forbidden from doing. So the first occasion, maybe some have mentioned it, have heard me mention this, I stopped a man from stabbing his girlfriend. Not completely successfully, but she survived. And while he was busy trying to stab me, my wife, Linda, who was still my girlfriend at the time, she was on the phone to the police. And he was trying to stab me, and all I was doing was my MMA push kicks. Wah! Push kick! Or as we call it, teep. And I was just push kick and push kick and push kick. And eventually he ran off. But we'd been wrestling at one point, and I managed to take his wallet, make his wallet fall out, get his wallet off him. And when the police came, honestly, the police came running out of the bushes, batons drawn, one had his gun out, and I remember I just grabbed a guy and hugged him. And then that's when the tears flew, because I'm still emotional, crying my eyes out. Who did this? Who did this? And I went, "There's his wallet, go get him." And that was cool. And then later on, actually, actually before that time, although this is not related to my Jehovah's Witness activities or my ex-Jehovah's Witness activities, my brother and I had helped pull a guy out of a flat, an apartment in America that had caught on fire, blazing, and we kicked in the door, crawled in on our knees, and we were apostates at this time, bad Jehovah's Witnesses. And we got on the front cover. We pulled the guy out, saved him. I had to get oxygen and stuff. It was a really bad fire. And we got a letter of commendation from the fire brigade. You saved this man's life. It was very brave. Don't do it again. Seriously, don't go into a burning building. It's terrifying. And although we weren't being talked to by the Jehovah's Witnesses, the funny thing is, I later on heard that they were saying, "Oh, see, that's Jehovah. Jehovah did that. There's still some good in them." Yeah. Anyway, so going back to the lady who was nearly stabbed, sort of semi-stabbed, because he sliced at her. We went to court. He got, I think, 2.5 years suspended. It's Britain, and I got accommodation then as well from the judge. And I mean, that's enough for one life, I think, to do cool things, isn't it? You've left the Jehovah's Witness. That's the start of a life well lived. And subsequent to that, then my wife, when we were married, now Linda and I were married, and we had kids. We had Emily was our first child. We lost our first child, I should say, but Emily was our first successful child. And she was in our in the back seat, the baby seat, and Linda said, "Look across the road, Neil." And she pointed, and there was 2 guys, and they were robbing a bus driver. They'd taken his little bag of coins, and he was struggling. I mean, I would not struggle for a bag of coins, let me tell you. But they were kicking him, like football kicking him in the head, and he was nearly unconscious, and they were just lining up, and this guy was lining up to just continue kicking him. And I remember, and this is the best thing about what the MMA training did for me, is that I didn't think, I honestly never even thought about it. I just stopped the car right in the middle of traffic. I ran across 2 lanes of traffic, and just as this guy was lining up and he was just about to swing a massive kick into this man's head, I just punched him right in the side of the head. Boom! He goes down like a brick, and I just looked at the other guy and screamed at him and said, get on the fucking ground. And he went down and he lay down on the ground. Now, later on he got a bit frisky, and me and a guy who turned out to be a prison officer ended up pretty much beating them up. And that was great. And then the best thing about that was not the best thing. The best thing was being able to help. But the other thing was I got an £800, that's about $1,000 reward from Ulsterbus, who later became TransLink. And that was so cool. What an awesome thing to have happened. And anyway, I got all that, all for the benefit of being, doing something that Jehovah's Witnesses will never experience, because they live a life half lived. So, in my life, I still think there's a lot that I haven't done. I'm still in this sort of janitorial world of carpet cleaning and stuff, and I regret that. But my kids never will, thankfully. And I live my own life on my own terms, which is positive too. I've just written little books, so that's all good, and available on Amazon. And but it just made me think. I don't like to particularly mention those stories too much, because it sounds like, oh, you're just blowing your own horn. But I'd really like any of the comments below. If anyone's got a comment, tell me what you did subsequent to leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses that made your life well lived, because that's what matters. That's the whole game, And or if it's not that, at least your children. What did you do that you couldn't have done as a Jehovah's Witness? I'd love to hear, because I know I've done some things that make me they give me a lot of pleasure to talk about and to think about, and make me proud. And when I'm an old man, I can hang my hat and say, yeah, I've been there and done that, son. Guys, thanks very much for watching The Great Apostate. I really appreciate it. If you've lasted all here 14 minutes, I'm going to go to bed now. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I hope you have a great 2018. Bye-bye.